They thought I was just another face passing through another name. They could mispronounce another body. They could process and forget, and I knew that the moment the judge leaned forward and smiled like she already owned my future, that smile said everything without saying a word. It said, "I've done this before." It said, "You don't belong here." It said, "You're not leaving the way you walked in." And when she set my bail so high it sucked the air out of the room, I remember thinking, yeah, that happened. And I let it happen because sometimes the only way to expose a system is to let it show its teeth. See, places like Cedar County don't look dangerous at first. They look quiet. Clean courthouse flags, out front portraits of former judges staring down like saints. Folks wave at each other, say, "Yes, ma'am, no, sir," and from the outside it feels orderly, safe. But if you've lived long enough, you know some of the most controlled places are controlled because fear is doing the heavy lifting. I wasn't there by accident. For months, complaints had been piling up, same story every time. Stops that made no sense, charges that didn't line up, sentences that felt less like justice and more like extermination. And the same two names kept coming up: the judge and her favorite deputy. So instead of sending a team and letting everyone clean their desks before we arrived, I drove in alone. No badge out front, no warnings, just a rented car, a calm voice, and time. I didn't even make it 3 miles before the lights came on behind me, red and blue, filling my mirrors like a reflex. I pulled over, slow windows down, keys on the dash, hands visible. I'd taught that drill to hundreds of agents. You know what I mean? How to make everyone feel safe. The deputy didn't care. He came up on the passenger side, hand glued to his holster, eyes already irritated like my existence was an inconvenience. He didn't ask for my license, he demanded it. When I told him where it was and asked to reach, his jaw tightened. Step out of the vehicle. Not because I'd done anything, but because he wanted control. When I stood up, he took that little half step back, the one insecure men take when they realize intimidation isn't working. He patted me down rough, dug through my pockets, pulled out my wallet and my phone, and here's the part that still sticks with me. My credentials were right there, folded clear as day. He never even looked. He pocketed everything like it was his. Then he leaned in, sniffed the air like he was performing for an audience, and said he smelled weed. There wasn't anything in the air but heat and asphalt. I told him he could search the car. That should have ended it. Instead, it lit him up. He wanted resistance. When he didn't get it, he invented it. Said I was tense. Said that was resisting. Cuffs went on too tight, metal biting into my wrists, and I remember cataloging it the way you do when you know you'll need it later. Excessive force. No probable cause. Escalation without justification. He shoved me into the cruiser and started stacking charges like he was building a case out of thin air. And the whole time he kept smiling at me through the mirror, telling me how much the judge hated out-of-towners who thought they were smart. I leaned back and closed my eyes because that's exactly what I needed to hear. Jail has a smell you never forget. Bleach sweat, old fear baked into concrete. They processed me slow on purpose, took their time, ignored my request for a phone call until hours later. When they finally let me use the wall phone, the sergeant laughed like he already knew I was done. I dialed a number that sounded harmless. Pizza, deep dish, code phrase. And the moment the voice on the other end changed, the moment it went from casual to locked in, I knew the net was live. I told them not to move yet, told them I needed the judge. When I hung up, the sergeant laughed harder, thought I'd wasted my call. I looked at him and said, "I get hungry watching people ruin their careers." He didn't laugh after that. They put me in a holding cell with guys who looked like they'd been carrying the weight of this place for years. One kid, barely 19, curled into himself like he was trying to disappear. He asked what I was in for, and when I said driving while black, he laughed in that broken way that isn't really humor. He told me his story, and it matched all the others. Pat down turned into assault. Sneezing turned into resisting. Talking turned into more time. He warned me about the judge, called her the hangman. And that was the moment it stopped being theoretical for me. It wasn't about my case anymore. It was about all of them. The courtroom the next morning felt like a factory. Chains clinking, people shuffling, air thick and broken. The judge came in like she owned the place, never looking at faces, just files. She chewed through cases like paperwork, handing out years with the flick of her wrist. When the kid from my cell tried to speak, she doubled his sentence just for opening his mouth. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I stayed still. When my name was called, I stepped forward and met her eyes. She smirked, called me a drifter. I corrected her calmly. The room went quiet. She didn't like that. Didn't like my tone. When I said I'd represent myself and moved to dismiss based on lack of probable cause and civil rights violations, she laughed. When I mentioned the statistics, the impossible conviction rate, she snapped. Dropped the mask, told me this was her town and she didn't appreciate strangers telling her how to run things. And then she set bail at $50,000 cash only for a traffic stop. Said I was a flight risk, a danger. She said it all out loud on the record, voice sharp and ugly, and I thanked her with my silence as they led me away. That night she doubled down, ordered me isolated, no calls, no lawyer, told the deputy to process my cash into department funds and to lose my phone. I heard it all through the feed, every word, every decision, stacking charges she didn't even realize she was committing. That's the thing about people who've never been challenged. They start believing rules are suggestions. They forget there's a line until they sprint past it. The deputy came for me after midnight, took me somewhere cameras don't reach, a storage room that smelled like mildew and bad ideas. He wanted to teach me a lesson, wanted me to fall down some stairs. When I warned him, when I told him to think carefully, I saw the doubt flicker in his eyes.